Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for Wednesday, May 29th. We are here. We're going to be breaking it down. There are 7 games to go over on both slates. We also have baseball going on right now, so we got baseball all day today. It is a good day. Now, before we get into it, come join us at LineStar. If you haven't tried us out, go through the app stores. Free 7-day trial through either iOS or Android App Store. It does give you access to the web also. You only need one subscription to get all the web, all the apps, all the sports, the DFS, the props. You get it all. So come join us. Come give us a test, and let's see what we can do. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the perfect lineups from yesterday and the winning lineups from both slates, from both sites, Fanduel and DraftKings. Then we will get into tonight's slate, the perfect lineup, or the pitchers to consider, some stacks to consider, and get into it all. Now, let's get to the perfect lineup. All right, so on FanDuel, Ben Brown just was absolutely amazing last night. Now, this is the reason I didn't talk about him yesterday, is his last game, he only went 66 pitches. You know, before that, 42, 28. So I didn't think there was any way that he would get close to 100 pitches or even near, say, mid-90s like he got. I did notice before the slate that he had just a huge K rate over his last 5 starts and a great fit, but I made the poor decision to not really talk about him and expect him to be insanely limited. Ends up, he was absolutely spectacular. At least my boy Ryan Humphreys did shout him out in the newsletter yesterday, so make sure you pay attention to those if you are a LineStar sub. He definitely made some people some money yesterday with that pick. Now, outside him, we got a 3-man Cubs stack, and then all one-offs, or sorry, not Cubs, Cleveland stack. Guardians just went absolute nuts yesterday, putting up 13 runs. Coors had 20 runs altogether. Now, the winning lineup went to Sully Brochill. You won $20K. Congrats. And they had Ben Brown, of course, with a 4-man Cleveland and 4-man Colorado stack. So just a complete game stack of that game, and 280.8 is just an insanely high score. So congrats to Sully Brochill. You got it done. You won by 5 points and got pretty different and just went nuts. So now let's get over to the DraftKings lineup and check that one out here. All right, so we got Ben Brown. We got Matt Waldron, who we talked about was a great value piece. I personally faded him a little bit just because of his inconsistency, and at high ownership I struggled to go there, but he got it done almost, as high as a score of Ben Brown, and that allowed you go 3 key Cleveland pieces and then all one-offs there. And then the winning lineup went to JBC with Hunter Brown, Matt Waldron, so 2 pay down options here. And then the 3-man Cleveland stack, 5-man Toronto, 5-3 lineup construction got it done. Now let's get into today's slate, shall we? All right, 7 games on the docket, and starting with the highest owned pitcher, Shota Amanga. So obviously he looks great. He's been pitching amazing all season. I still do think there's some regression coming here. I don't think he can hold a .84 ERA for the whole season, 2.25 FIP. Guy's been pitching unbelievable. Solid K rate here. Milwaukee strikes out almost 24% versus lefties. They don't have a great WOBA versus lefties. They do hit the ball hard, still 176 ISO, but I think there's reason to like Shota, and I like him in this spot. Pitching's a little bit rough today, so there's not going to be a ton of options here on DraftKings. Next, we got Bailey Ober, 8K versus the Royals. Now, Ober's been pitching great, 4.45 FIP over his last 20, but 3.88 over his last 5 with the solid K rate. Now, Ober is kind of a feast or famine guy, so I don't mind taking some Royals bats here against him, but he's been pitching great so far this season, and there's definitely some strikeout upside. So I like going with Ober here, even though KC 166 ISO versus righties, and the BVP data 68 plate attempts. They're hitting 377 off him with a 361 ISO. So KC has done well off them. However, I do have to bring out that he just got shelled versus them the first game of the season. It was the first game of the season, so I will give him a little bit of a pass there. But last year, they also got to him a little bit. There's been a few spots where they have definitely been able to put some runs on him. So Ober's a little scary in that sense of being a high-owned guy versus a decent Royals offense that is just playing really well. Next, we got Lou Gill. Lou Gill has been pretty amazing so far this season. 2.29 FIP over his last 5, 31% K rate. He's allowing a lot of fly balls, but outside of that, he looks great with his StatCast data. Angels offense, I still do expect them to fall off a cliff, but they are still hitting the ball well, still kind of putting it together. 170 ISO versus righties, so they hit righties hard, but not very well with a 308 WOBA. 22% K rate, 25.7% combined K rate. I definitely like Gill, and I think his ownership should be very, very similar to Shota, but Shota is coming up slightly more owned. Next, we got Justin Verlander versus Seattle. I mean, it's a fine matchup. Seattle strikes out enough. The one thing with Verlander, and that's my big issue, 5.45 FIP over the last 5 starts, and only a 19% K rate. At 8.8K, I think he just doesn't quite have the upside I really want here. Yes, he can hit, 30. He's done it pretty much twice this year, but I think the most likely outcome for him is low 20s and just not quite enough to get it done. I'm fine with a little Verlander, just not pushing him real hard. Mackenzie Gore versus the Braves. Mackenzie Gore has been pitching unbelievable. This Braves offense is struggling a little bit to get it going, but they do hit lefties very hard. You can go either way on this one. I side a little bit more with Gore, but I think in general, I'm probably not really going here. If I get, 1, 2, 3, 4 lineups with him, I'm fine, but I'm not going to go hard on him, that's for sure. Alek Manoah, 8.3K versus the Sox. It is versus the Sox. Manoah has shown some upside so far this year, so I'm a little bit intrigued to go here, but I'm not going to go super hard. Our projection's only 1.5x, just not quite enough for me to really want to go there. But at 8.3K, 24.1% combined K rate, I'm intrigued. Seth Lugo, Minnesota hitting righties decently here. They strike out a decent amount. Wind is blowing in, so it does help Lugo here. The big thing for me that I think is kind of wild is over these last 5 starts, he has a 28.6% K rate, and I just don't think that's him. I think he is much more of this 22% K rate guy, which he has been over the last, 20 starts. So I think this 25.4% combined K rate is probably a little bit high for him. However, he's been pitching insane, and you got to give him that credit. He's also done well versus Minnesota, but versus them, the K rate is down at 13%. So I am a little bit intrigued. Our value is there. Don't mind having some of him for sure, but I'm not going to go overboard just because I think he is more of a 22% K rate guy than a 28% And it just takes away a lot of his upside. Now, he is a guy that can pitch very deep into games and do well, so I don't mind getting some. George Kirby. I think this is my, very low-owned play that I like on this slate. Now, he is 8.5K, so his price is way down. Over his last 5.35 FIP looks terrible. 15% K rate looks terrible, but 4 of the last 5 starts have been away, and he averages 64.8% more fantasy points away. This is a thing that we have tracked all last year. He strikes more guys out at home. He's just better at home. Now, Houston's a good offense, but I'm going to side with Kirby in this one. Kirby is an excellent pitcher at 8.5K. I think it's too cheap for his upside. And this guy is a very, very good pitcher. Going extremely low owned. I'm intrigued here. And it's a way to get different to be able to fit some of that Colorado and Cleveland game in. That game has an 11-game total, which is much higher than everything else. If another spot I think you can get different is Logan Allen. I don't love it, but Colorado strikes out a lot versus lefties. However, they do hit lefties hard, but it is that Colorado offense. It's not very good. I'm not going to have much, but that is another pivot I think you can make. Now, let's get into the FanDuel side and run through those pitchers. Oh, another guy that is not showing up quite yet, I got to bring up because it is versus Atlanta is there, and it is Spencer Swollenbach. He is a solid prospect, 10.2 Ks per 9. He's going to be starting for the Braves today. We should have that uploaded in a little while. I do believe he's been added to both sites. I know he has been, at least for FanDuel. So DraftKings is usually much better than FanDuel on it. So I expect him to be on both. So we got to talk about him. We are going to get him added later. He wasn't in our system yet. So we got to do some mapping to get him added. But I am a little bit intrigued with him at his price and upside versus that Washington offense, but there is nice hitting weather there. All right. FanDuel, Justin Verlander, 3.5 or 35%, 9.3K. I think he's too high owned. Don't mind having a little bit of him just as a hedge, but if I was going to look at this, I would be fading Verlander, and I don't mind that Seattle stack. If I am making one lineup, Verlander's not my guy I'm going with on this slate. Lou Gill, 10.5K. I would much prefer him over Verlander at 6% less owned. And I definitely like shot at 10.8K and half the ownership as Verlander. Then Bailey Ober, don't mind this play at 7%. He is intriguing, but Royals have hit him in the past. Seth Lugo, I don't mind going here as well. We have him at 10K with 3.9x, 39% or point projection, which is just slightly undershot and going way less owned. So I think you could make some swings here. Alek Manoah and George Kirby, I think, are both in play. Outside of that, probably not going anywhere else FanDuel-wise. There's, 5 or 6 guys that I like, and I will probably stick to those. Let's get over to the stacks. All right, so our highest ceiling play, no surprise whatsoever. We got the Cleveland Guardians in Colorado versus Ty Black, who just hasn't been good. 5.25 FIP over his last 20, 4.41 over the last 5. His games in Colorado haven't been good. The bullpen behind him is bad. It makes sense to want to go to some Cleveland. One thing I will say is you can get different with some of these Cleveland stacks too, so just pay attention to ownership a little bit. Try and get a little different with that lineup and go ahead and play your Cleveland. You might have to get different either with a secondary stack or your pitchers to just stand out a little bit from the field. Next, Yankees are popping up. Makes a lot of sense. Tyler Anderson is in a tough spot. He's been pitching decently, but this Yankees team has just been crushing the ball. Makes some sense to want to go there. And they're also a team that can put up double-digit runs, which we may need on this slate with Cleveland and Colorado playing in nice hitting weather. All right, highest projected ownership for these stack attacks is Cleveland. No surprise. Toronto is popping up versus Chris Flexen a little bit. Now, at this ownership for Toronto, I am off it. I think that is way too high owned. I would way rather just take the ownership on Cleveland. Now, there is a chance that Cleveland is a little bit higher, Toronto is a little bit lower, but still, I don't think Flexen is that bad of a pitcher to just load up on the other team. 4.4 FIP. 4.8 FIP over the last 20. They are at home. There's plenty of reason to go to Toronto, and I don't hate them. I just think they're going a little bit too high owned, personally. Now, let's get into the highest projected stacks here. And we got Cleveland all over the place. It is just Cleveland, a little bit of Toronto, a little bit of Yankees popping up. I would be just trying to get one of these lower owned stacks. 67% owned. Definitely not. Oh, and Schwellenbach should be added to both sites. We will check back on that in a minute and go from there here. But yeah, so Cleveland, I would just be trying to take a little bit of the lower owned Cleveland stacks here. Get a little different. Bo Naylor isn't going to be super high owned. Fry, Ramirez, Jimenez, all are going to be decently owned, but there's definitely ways to get different here in this Cleveland stack, so I don't mind doing that. Now, highest value stack of the day. White Sox versus Alek Manoah, which makes some sense. Manoah's got absolutely crushed over the last couple years. He has had some solid games making his comeback this year, but if he, reverts back to form or White Sox figure it out a little bit, he can absolutely get crushed here. So I'm not that surprised. However, I do think the White Sox stack with with their talent level, 40% owned might be a little high owned for them in my eyes. So I don't mind going White Sox, but I also don't mind going Manoah here. And let's check the team's stack here. Oh, one last thing. I didn't check the FIP. So highest FIP over the last 20 starts is Alek Manoah at 5.72. Ty Block is second with Cleveland, and Bryce Wilson is third. So that Cubs stack looks nice. Let's go to the implied runs. So 5.9 Cleveland is the most implied runs. Ty Block's not good. High average exit velocity, high hard contact, poor bullpen. Makes sense to go to Guardians for sure. But I think Cleveland's interesting too, or Colorado is interesting also. 5.1 implied total. They will be way less owned. Logan Allen's allowed some hard contact, allowed high average exit velocity. The only thing here is that Cleveland's bullpen is much better. Yankees versus Ty Anderson. Tyler Anderson's been solid. That bullpen, not so much. Toronto versus Chris Flexen, 4.7 implied total. And Atlanta at 4.6. All of which are in consideration. I think the Cubs have been much worse hitting on the road. However, Bryce Wilson's not that great and pretty hard contact, pretty high average exit velocity. So that's the full rundown. Good luck to you all today, and hopefully we can make some money on this slate, guys. I'll see you later. Let's just check if here goes Schwallenbach. So versus lefties, Washington's not great. Schwallenbach, like I said, 10.2 Ks per 9. He's interesting. Washington, decent average versus lefties, but ISO's real low lately. K rate's high lately, and average is meh. WOBA very low. So I think Wallenbach has a pretty interesting spot. 7.5K. I'd be a little bit interested on DraftKings, especially as your second pitcher at 7.2K. Not quite as interested on FanDuel. The reason being, might be tough for him to go 6 innings, but he absolutely can. However, there is some upside with him. You know, if he can stick to a K per inning and beat up on Washington a little bit, he can get it done. But all in all, good luck, guys. We will be back on, not sure if we'll be back tomorrow. The Thursday slate's been kind of weird. I think there are over 4 games. So I should see you tomorrow, but if not, see you guys Friday. Good luck. Let's make some money. Peace.